masses affect the masses. There's no excuse. You've been loosed.
This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Janice Pons. I am the host on our podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspective, Spiritual Truths. Guys, let's dive in. We're going to go all the way in, okay? Because why? There's a lot to go in about, and we need to talk about it. We need to process, metabolize, strategy, skills, tools, ways of thinking, just challenging one another, supporting one another, praying for one another. We got our flag behind us that represents our states, the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America, the 50 states thereof, those stars, it represents us, our communities, our homes, our churches, our businesses, our workplaces, our families. We have our presidential seal that reminds us to pray for the president of this nation, the president's family, the cabinet, their families. I want everybody to do well. For me, you all know that it kind of doesn't even boil down to, for me anymore, to political parties. It boils down to America. And so we know we've got that election coming up in November. The closer we get to it, it's going to get real wild. Why? Because we have forces that want to distract us and to keep us at each other's throats. And so it's so important that we focus on the truth. And so over here in this community, we dissect things because this election is coming up in November is important. The presidential election coming up in 2028 is incredibly important. So we need the right leadership in this country. And so tonight, we're going to examine something that's generated a lot of discussion in our nation. We just talk about stuff over here in this community, things that are generating a lot of discussion, and we dissect it. Tonight, we're going to talk about the elephant in the midst. Elephant in the midst. Some people be talking, well, we're going to talk about the elephant in the living room. Well, we're going to talk about the elephant in the midst, and our clinical perspective is toxic pulpits. Toxic pulpits. There's an old saying that we often hear that says something like, well, don't judge a book by its cover. A lot of people shut you out or go into an immediate tailspin with just the mentioning of when you talk about the Trump administration and President Trump, it's like they go off. They are literally triggered. It's all on social media. It's everywhere. It's in pulpits. It's everywhere. One thing that I feel many forget is that it's not all about the president. It's really about this great country of America, the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America. Guys, my brothers and sisters, my fellow Americans, it is about, if we forget this part, we're going to miss part of it. We're going to miss a big, huge part, a big, huge dynamic. The spiritual conflict that's ramping up, that's not even a consideration of many Americans, but I think this should be one of the number one concerns of men of God. Now perhaps some may think that I'm addressing black pastors rather than all pastors. I'm talking about all pastors, but there is a specific target that has been put on a certain ethnicity in this nation. Stick with me. People would be in sheer denial if we ignore the elephant in the room. There is an elephant in the midst. Let's go there. What we are observing does apply to all pastors, regardless of their race or ethnicity. Yet, we would be negligent if we ignored the fact that Black Americans have a long history with the Democratic Party that has not served the Black community or our nation well. And now there is a socialist regime taking over the Democratic Party that appears to be anti-American. It's a socialist regime. Stick with me. We're going somewhere and it's expecting us when we get there. This is not the same party of John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Jimmy Carter, and Bill Clinton. This shifting started with President Barack Hussein Obama, and it got on steroids with him. Stick with me. I'm going to lay out some facts here. This shifting started with Obama, who finds it important to continue interjecting himself like no other former president of this nation has ever done into the current affairs of American politics. None of them kept interjecting the way he has. Listen, I, Janice Pons, am not anti-black pastors. And I've heard people, she don't like black people. She don't like her own people. Baby, my people are Americans. And I would be totally remiss if I denied that I'm a descendant of a slave. My great-grandmother, Henrietta Phelps Jeffries, who ended up being a doctoress, and she would have been hung after she had been arrested if she had been found guilty by an all-white male jury when she was put on trial in 1913 in Caswell County, North Carolina. Go look her up. Henrietta Phelps Jeffries, the trial of Henrietta Phelps Jeffries, and she was acquitted. She was a doctoress. She was born a slave. She was born 100 years before I was. Just a powerful story. And so people think that when I go there with these types of dynamics that I'm against black people. Are you kidding me? I am for America, but the reason I go here is that I do have a specific concern about the ethnic group that God saw fit for me to be a part of. And I see this vitriol that comes from black pastors that is from the pits of hell. It's from the pits of hell, and it's not of God. And if you got white folk to start talking about it, says, yeah, I'll go there. And somebody needs to dissect it. Guys, we got answers, and we're full of greatness. And this vitriol is coming from some black pastors and coming from these toxic pulpits. We need to talk about it. I am not anti-black pastors. That would be ridiculous, seeing that I am black myself. I'm a woman of color myself. But I believe we should call things out that are affecting people. If we look at the book of Ezekiel, God would have watchmen on the walls for Israel. When they would see an enemy approaching, they would sound the alarm to warn the people. Do we need that same type of watchful eye today, guys? Is it necessary? I thank God that many black Americans around this country are opening their eyes. We're opening our eyes to what really happened to us as a group of people. And there was a political party that had a specific influence upon us, namely the Democratic Party. Many are no longer voting for Democrats. What I'm really getting at is that it's best for America, not just black Americans. I'm talking about all Americans. And a lot of people, a lot of politicians, they don't like to go there. I've talked to some major ones. I honor and respect and love Kevin Hearns. He's going to be our senator from Oklahoma. And he and I have had some amazing interactions. And, you know, I brought up kind of the racial thing, and he just said, I'm for America. And I respect that. And I get it. And so, well, I'll talk about it. But, you know, he doesn't go there. And I get it, and I respect that. And he says, well, I'm all about America. And I am too, Senator Hearn. I am. You know, I love you and your precious wife. And y'all are amazing people. I have so much honor and respect for you. And I get it. And I also get this, that I am a member of an ethnicity that has been targeted. So I'll go there. I'm about America, but I'm a black American, but I'm a Christian. And yes, I am. I'm not going to forget about the ethnicity that I'm a part of, because they're using it. They're using it in this country to try to divide us. and it say that our president is racist. And I heard Kevin Hearn speaking. I was at City Elders. I sang the national anthem, and he got up and shared. And he was talking about how they tried to say he was racist. And he's not. They'll play that race card on us. They play it on us, they play it on white folk, and they play it on Christian conservative constitutionalists who happen to be black Americans. And we take a special kind of licking. They just kind of whop us, and I've gone through 3 public smear campaigns around this very dynamic. And we're speaking up. President Trump represents this country like no other president in my lifetime. So has Senator Hearn. So has Janice Pons. We're speaking up. We're speaking up. We're talking about the elephant in the midst, and we're talking about toxic pulpits. President Trump putting America first policies are benefiting all the people of this country and the country itself and the rest of the world. Why can't black Americans, why can't many black Americans recognize this? They've been programmed and targeted. They're listening to the lying mainstream media, the manipulative, conniving, diabolical mainstream media. And if you look at the ones that are the black ones, they come across with another diabolical presentation that needs to be confronted. And I don't mind going there. Why are we focusing on the man rather than his policies and the color of his skin? People will say things like, name one policy that the president has implemented that benefited the black community. Baby, do you have time? Sit down. I can go over them all. There are so many. The first is reforming the criminal justice system. He took it to another level. Yes, Obama did something related to criminal justice, but not to the level that President Trump did. President Trump affected it in such a very hard-hitting, specific way, where 90% of those who had their sentences reduced were black men and women. Alice Marie Johnson benefited from the president's policy, and she went on to the White House, and she became a prominent advocate for the policy. She's been responsible for hundreds of people getting out of prison early. She studied those cases. Thank God for her. She was convicted in 1996 for a nonviolent drug offense. Alice Marie Johnson. I remember the day that she got out. I remember the day she finally got to the White House and she hugged that man. She was convicted in 1996 for a nonviolent drug offense and received a life sentence. She served 20 years of that sentence before President Trump commuted her sentence in 2018. Would a racist man do such a thing? He later granted her full pardon in 2020. Barack Obama could have done the same thing, but he didn't do it. Black colleges of this nation has benefited from President Trump's policies. People say, what has he done for us? Listen, the Trump administration in 2026 has focused on strengthening historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs. I'm a graduate of one, North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. I graduated summa cum laude, 6 out of 750 graduates. I thank God for the amazing education that I got there. Yes, the Aggies. I went there. And I'm appreciative. The HBCUs were started by white Republicans back in the 1800s. We couldn't go to school. We couldn't be educated in the other schools. They started HBCUs. Moving the HBCUs initiative to the White House. President Trump did that. He moved that initiative to the White House for direct oversight. the Black Conservative Federation, Mr. Johnson, Deontay, I think it's Deontay Johnson, actively involved in that. Shannon Kendricks, all those people, Alveda King. Guys, President Trump has leaned into that. That is at the White House for direct oversight and facilitating public and private partnerships. A racist wouldn't do that. Key actions include signing the Future Act policy, providing $255 million in permanent annual funding, and redirecting over $400 million for campus infrastructure and development. What would this have bloomed and blossomed into? What would have been said about that dynamic of the whole HBCU if the first Black president, if he had taken those initiatives to the level that President Trump did, guys? President Trump took all that to a totally different level. The reason why he didn't, because his focus was not on America first, but he tore America down with policies, guys. He just did. The money laundering fronts, Obamacare, the stimulus packet. There were companies, they got that stimulus money. They got over on us like a fat rat, got the millions upon millions of dollars and filed bankruptcy and ran. Guys, this is why. Guys, Obama has a different agenda than America First. He perpetuates that Agenda 2030. This is why he continually works behind the scenes to help facilitate things that don't contribute to the building up of America. He despises President Trump's trajectory for this country. The enemy of our souls is using the animosity, TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, to camouflage what President Trump has really accomplished and continues to try to accomplish. That is the destruction, undoing. President Trump came in and tackled what had been going on through the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal, which was leading to the destruction of this great nation. All of these agendas that I look back at the last two podcasts before this one, I've laid it out, dissected it all. That's what we were dealing with. They didn't care that 1 million people, Americans, are you kidding me? Wouldn't even let us get certain medications. COVID-19 became a part of the fraudulent scams and money laundering fronts, all on the backs of 1 million Americans that died. President Trump is not the problem here in America. It is those who have been perpetrating the ending of his life, trying to put him in jail, orchestrated lawfare, and constantly lying on him. If anyone should discern this, it should be Black preachers. Did you hear me? I said it again. I say it and I say it again. You don't have discernment. If you're bashing him, you don't have discernment. If anyone should discern it, it should be ministers of the gospel who happen to be Black Americans, as well as all men of God, regardless of race. You know why Black men should have a particular discernment? Because the things of perpetration that has been done against Donald John Trump, trying to take him out, trying to put him in jail, constantly lying on him. That was a part of the social dynamics that black folk were dealing with through slavery, sharecropping, and Jim Crow. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. That's what the Democratic Party did to, quote unquote, black America. That's history accurately told, guys. I lived it. So I asked this question. I asked this question of black Americans who attacked President Trump. Get ready for their answer. Just get ready for their answer when you ask them this question. I was told by several, and they only provided one answer. I said, what has the Democratic Party done for black Americans now? What? And you know what they said? They gave black women reproductive rights. That came out of their mouth. They gave black women reproductive rights. I could go on and on with more of this, but I think you see what I'm getting at. Gave them the right to dismember, burn, and liquefy their tiny children with viable heartbeats, which is anti-God. And not only do black women take advantage of that, women of other races do too. But it is a disproportionate number of that going on with black women in America. So just what have they done specifically for the black community, guys? What has the Democratic Party done? The answer, nothing. Nothing. Here's the major problem with black pastors. I'm talking about a reality in our nation. They are liberal-minded themselves, and they're keeping black America in the dark. You have to be liberal-minded to support the Democratic Party. You just do. Remember what then candidate Joe Biden said about voting Democrat? He said, you ain't black if you don't vote Democrat. I wrote a song called You Ain't Black. You can go on YouTube and see part of it, or you can order it. Black pastors often order the whole song. Black pastors often are keeping their memberships voting liberal. It's intentional for the Democrat Party. I've sat in many church services and heard it for myself. This has been a playbook for the Democratic Party for a very long time. But now, due to socialism and communism, this party is after the destruction of America. In the words of President Trump, they're not after me. I'm just in the way of them getting to you, the American people. If we can just get the black pastors of this nation that's against President Trump to discern this, we could help protect America's future. They're working against America. God bless the United States of America, and God bless Donald John Trump, who is fighting for all Americans, and yes, with specificity, he has addressed issues that concern black Americans. Why? Historically, there are certain things that have affected black Americans in a very specific way, and he didn't turn a deaf ear to it. Truth. That's the truth. Guys, this shifts us into our clinical perspective. Toxic pulpits. Guys, a toxic church is defined by an unhealthy culture where spiritual authority is misused, leaders are shielded from accountability, and the institution is prioritized over the well-being of its members. There are warning signs that include spiritual manipulation, absolute control by a central figure, rampant gossip, and extreme secrecy. These environments generally exhibit several consistent red flags. Let's go there. there is usually authoritarian leadership and a lack of accountability. We're talking about toxic pulpits, and this is a dynamic that is going on in our churches. It has a very specific ethnic presentation, but it is a general issue in our nation. Authoritarian leadership and lack of accountability, there can be what's called an untouchable leader. It can be a lead pastor or leadership team that's never questioned. And any disagreement is framed as rebellion against God. There can be rubber stamp boards. Oversight committees like elders or deacons consist of loyalists who fail to provide meaningful checks and balances. They talk around things. They don't lean into the core of what's going on. Then there's this pedestal culture that goes on. A lot of times pastors are elevated to a celebrity status rather than serving as a humble shepherd. I've seen this, and it's diabolical, the weaponizing of Scripture. We're talking about toxic pulpits. Weaponizing Scripture, leaders will use Bible verses, guilt, or fear to control congregants' personal lives, their finances, or decisions. Personal lives, finances, or decisions. Then there is the punishing doubt. Punishing doubt. Members are expected to be perfect and even to hide their struggles. Asking legitimate questions or expressing doubt is discouraged or condemned. In other words, you can't ask questions. What do you mean asking questions? That's a huge red flag. Then there's something called blacklisting. People who leave the church are shunned, discredited, or spoken of as fallen or disloyal, or they'll do a video about you. They'll slam you. They'll gaslight you. Then there's a focus with toxic pulpits, and we're talking about this presentation of the elephant in the midst, and it does tie into politics a lot of times. There's image over integrity. There's no focus on integrity. The focus is on image. What will others think about us? So there becomes a protecting of a brand. The church's reputation and image are prioritized over the safety, the healing, and justice of its members. Different public and private personas is a dynamic that goes on. The public messaging heavily focuses on grace, love, and community. But there's an internal culture that's marked by fear, bullying, and intimidation, and that's where a lot of people get stuck. I've seen it far too many times. They get stuck. Guys, there's some behavioral and social red flags. This is our clinical perspective. We're thinking out loud. God has a better way, but we got to lean into some things, or the dysfunction just keeps going on. There can be rampant gossip. You know, I used to, when I was a director of these programs, and all this stuff was coming up, and I would talk to my team, and I said one day, God, I feel like I'm gossiping. He said, no, you're not. He said, you got to talk about this stuff. He said, this is what he told me. As my 102-year-old mama says, I'm just telling you what they told me. This is what God told me. He said, it is not gossip because you have to process it. He said, and what makes it not be gossip is that you add on the solution-focused problem resolved, Janice Pons. I knew that came straight from the throne. I was like, wow, that's good, because I needed to be laying out this stuff that was being presented to me that was just people doing jacked up stuff, tearing the organization up if it wasn't addressed properly. And so it goes on, it goes on, it goes on, it goes on in churches, organizations, job settings, everywhere, families. And so it can seem like rampant gossip. But adding on the solution, focus, resolve can take it to another level. Rampant gossip, instead of addressing grievances directly, according to biblical principles, leaders or members use backbiting, rumors, and triangulation to control narratives. Then sometimes there's something called elitist mentality. The church claims to have the only right way to interpret faith, leading to isolation from other believers and the local community. Then there's micromanagement and favoritism. Leaders show favoritism toward those who obey unquestioningly. They don't ask any questions, and alienate or sideline those that don't measure up. If you are experiencing emotional trauma, spiritual abuse, or observing unchecked financial and personal control, expert resources can help you recognize and process the damage. Sometimes you need to be involved in the therapeutic process. Ask me how I know. I've helped people to get to it. I've gone through trauma myself and processed it and got help. Spiritual abuse, there are resources for that, offers comprehensive directories and educational materials for identifying and healing from abusive church environments. It's rampant, guys. Wounded, there's resources for woundedness that happens. There's resources for that. It provides specific frameworks to help individuals navigate the complex grief of leaving an unhealthy church. And guys, if it's a quote-unquote black church, oh my God, it can go to an entirely other level. And if you happen to be a Christian conservative constitutionalist in one, you can get massively abused. I remember a black woman who came up to me and said, and the Republicans got the nerve to talk about the Bible. I looked at her and I said, why wouldn't they talk about the Bible? She thought I was nuts. And this was someone that I had gone to Bible training college with. I shut her down quick. Why wouldn't they talk about the Bible? What have we looked at tonight? Elephant in the midst. The elephant in the midst. Our clinical perspective is toxic pulpits. Guys, we need to go there. We need to give permission for people to think about these things, for people to think about strategy, skills, and tools. Because, guys, we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to keep dissecting these things as we continue to go from destruction to dignity, clinical perspective, spiritual truths. All those dynamics I'm talking about, that's destruction. But God has a path for us to go to dignity, guys. A great path. And those clinical perspectives is a way of thinking. It's renewing our mind, our soul, our mind, our will, our emotions, our intellect, our drive, and our desires. And then there's spiritual truths. Guys, let's lean in. Let's love one another. Love ye one another. We're going to keep dissecting these things because we are worth it. The elephant in the midst needs to be dealt with, and that's what we've done tonight. And there is toxicity in pulpits, but God has a better way. And so there are resources available for people to get well. But guys, you got to get honest. I will see you guys next week. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
We are one power, strength is ours, liberty, been set free, education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.